benefits that are too numerous to count that come right back to improve the life that we enjoy here on the Earth.
Hi, Denise Adams, Researcher News. I believe this is going to be a question for Mr. Herron. I'm curious what you feel the largest contribution that Langley has made to the exploration program is within the last 12 months.
That's difficult to assess. We are making large contributions. Greg told you about the launch abort system design that he is leading. We are standing up the System Engineering and Integration workforce for the Ares 1X developmental flight test to occur in about a year and a half. We're doing the aerodynamic studies for the Ares launch stack. It's hard to pick out any one effort and say this is the largest contribution. We are really contributing across the board to this program and its projects.
Any other questions? AJ?
Good morning. AJ Hostetler with the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Going to Mars, of course, presents a lot of different challenges than going to the moon, at least particularly for manned space flight. What aspects of developing and designing the Ares, the Orion, the launch abort system, the structural material science, what aspects of this next generation of vehicles can carry into the next generation of vehicles for manned space flight to Mars?
Well, I'll start at the highest level. The obvious capability that we're building that will enable us to go on beyond the moon and Mars is just look at the Ares 1X and the Ares 1 and the Ares 5. The large lift vehicle will give us capabilities that will allow us, the large payloads, as hard as it is to get to the moon, getting to Mars is that much harder. So you need a lot more stuff, if you will, on the first leg of the journey to low Earth orbit in order to get onto Mars. And so you need a large lift vehicle if you think you're even going to attack that problem. So there's an obvious, we're building capabilities for more than just being able to do the moon. And then obviously, no matter how we get the crew to Mars, the first 50 miles and the last 50 miles is the toughest, which is the launch vehicle, the capsule, and the escape system, and the recovery systems. All of those are applicable, and then they have to be upgraded for getting to and from Mars is even that much more difficult, because when you come home from Mars, you're really moving the speed of heat. So thermal protection systems and advances in those technologies will stress the recovery systems even harder, both at Mars and at coming back to Earth. But we're building the basic foundations and the basic vehicles and capabilities that will be required to do exploration beyond even the moon.
If I could continue on, the moon is relatively easy for us to get to, and we're going to use that as an opportunity for us to test and to understand what it's like to live off of a different body, so that when we get to Mars, so that when we can opportunity to get to Mars, we'll have a better understanding of what it takes in terms of logistics and supporting our lives on a different body. We will have, in our technology program, we have the ability to build our systems for the moon being mindful of Mars. So while we're not developing systems that will eventually be on Mars, we will build systems so that we understand what it takes to get on Mars. It's part of the instincts that we're building in right now, so that we understand what is it going to take to build a habitat in a place where there's low gravity, or where there's a high radiation environment, or where there's very difficult. How do you build an electrical ground in a system where the ground is got some electrical voltage to it already? So those types of things we're thinking about now. We're building those risk reduction activities into our lunar surface activities, so that when we get to Mars, we'll be smarter and we'll be more successful.
Any other questions?
Hi, Patrick Lynch with the Daily Press again. I can't remember which one of you spoke. I think it was John spoke a little bit about the temporary lunar habitat. Could you talk a little bit more about that and how much of that work is, or what is being done here specifically on that?
We are studying structures and materials that could be used for lunar habitat. We are looking at the possibility of an inflatable habitat as one approach. We're looking at the possibility of using the material, the regolith from the surface of the moon for radiation shielding. The drive is to reduce the mass we have to take to the surface of the moon, simply because that's a very expensive process, as well as providing the shielding the astronauts will need to survive for extended periods on the moon. Doc alluded to the Apollo program, in which we measured stays in single-digit days. We're talking months for this program. We need to provide the astronauts living space. We're looking at, we're using the expertise we've developed here at Langley over the 90 years of aeronautics research in structures and materials to define new structures, new materials that could be used for that. We're in a very early advanced technology development phase at this point, investigating a number of avenues. We'll be pursuing this, obviously, over the next several years as we try to narrow down the choices.
Next question, anyone? John?
John Glass with the Virginian Pilot newspaper. I'm wondering, given the limited resources that NASA has, given that humans have been to the moon before, I'm wondering if you could address the rationale of sending people back to the moon, what you hope to achieve from that, just the basic structure of that.
Well, the resources we have, this is a go-as-you-can-pay program. We've put together a program that is paced based on the resources that are available. So we lay out our goals, our needs, goals, objectives, and you look at our high-level requirements, and we lay it out, and that kind of defines the dates at which you can make these milestones. When we go to the moon this time, we're going to do a whole lot more than we did last time. As was John mentioned, I mentioned earlier, when we went to the moon before, it was basically a goal: get there, and sort of plant the flag, and you did it, and you won the race. A lot of good work was done, but we didn't go in a way that was sustainable. We are looking at putting together a sustainable, multi-generational program where each step builds off of previously accomplished steps. So you continue to progress in capabilities, which will help expand the technologies that are developed, our understanding of the moon. And there's a huge amount of work left undone on the moon. In fact, we've polled multiple science communities and multiple space groups. 14 different groups got together to look at the global exploration strategy for the moon. And the list of objectives that people would like to accomplish on the moon is huge. One interesting fact is we know more about the surface of Mars from our robotic missions to Mars than we know about the moon at this point. So even though we've been to the moon, it's like saying, well, I landed in the Arizona desert and walked around for a few days, so I know everything there is to know about the Earth. That's just not the way it works. There's a tremendous amount, and there's some very fascinating recent discoveries about the moon, including the fact that there may be ice. Water ice may exist in craters on the poles of the moon. So there's a lot of stuff we just don't know. So again, we're building this capability over a period of time to be able to continue to expand. And John, I think your term expanding the influence beyond just low Earth orbit to the human sphere of influence and economic influence further and further and further is what this program will enable.
Mike Harvey, Chief Meteorologist on News Channel 3. You said there were a number of objectives or research items that you'd like to attain when you get up to the moon. Can you just talk about the maybe top one or two research objectives, what you think they might be? I know it's a long ways out, but what those potentially could be.
Well, you could break the objectives up in different fields of study. There's